Welcome to the groundbreaking news program that delves into the heart of Mormonism, your weekly window into the unique intersection of news, history, and culture that resonates with the tapestry of Mormonism. So whether you're tuning in from the heart of Utah or joining us from around the world, your favorite news program starts now, where news meets insight and the stories of our faith unfold.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Mormon Newscast. We're on number 35, you guys. Can you believe we've done 34 before this one?
That's a lot of news.
It's a blur.
It's a lot of news. It is. So glad to be joined by my esteemed colleagues, Rebecca Biblioteca and Radio Free Mormon. How are both of you tonight?
Fabulous.
Great.
Excellent. Anything in your world before we start the news? Because otherwise we can jump into this first story.
Oh, absolutely. Let's.
All right. So let me, there's the slideshow, folks. We'll talk tonight about the lashback over new LDS transgender policies. We broke that news to you last week. That news came out Monday, the 19th, and we covered it that evening. We'll also talk about the Mormon wives fight back. Elder Bednar requests a flood, and Fairview receives an intent to sue notice. So, and with that, we'll go to the first video here. And this is the one that I put together on the transgender policies response. So here we go. Good evening. 1 week ago, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints released a set of new policies that have left the LGBTQ community and its activists and many within the faith feeling deeply disheartened. These guidelines, unveiled as part of updates to the General Handbook, significantly restrict the roles and participation of transgender members within the church. The new rules announced on Monday, August 19th, build upon an existing policy that prevents transgender individuals from being baptized without First Presidency approval. Now these guidelines go even further. While the church handbook states that those who have transitioned away from their biological sex at birth are welcome to attend services and participate in many other ways, the reality is that these ways are severely limited. For instance, an updated policy prohibits transgender members from staying overnight at youth camps and restricts their use of bathrooms at church meeting houses to single occupancy bathrooms. If they choose to use a restroom that aligns with their gender identity, a trusted person must stand outside to ensure that no one else enters. This rule change seems to send a clear message about how the church views transgender members' participation. Additionally, the church has doubled down on its stance that gender is defined strictly by one's biological sex at birth, stating that it does not take a position on the causes of gender dysphoria. This marks a shift away from previous practices, where local congregations had some flexibility in interpreting church policies, often allowing for more inclusive environments. Now, these new rules appear to remove that local discretion, enforcing a stricter, more uniform policy across the board. LGBTQ advocates within the faith have been quick to voice their concerns. Lori Lee Hall, a transgender woman who was excommunicated in 2017 after her transition, described the new guidelines as a significant setback. Quote, "The door seems shut and bolted," unquote, Hall said, highlighting how these new restrictions further alienate transgender members who already feel marginalized within the church. Hall shared her personal experience of being part of a local Mormon congregation that has been relatively welcoming, allowing her to participate in classes and activities with other women. But under these new guidelines, she would be forced to attend classes with men, despite presenting as female. Quote, "I'd attend church in dress, shoes, and makeup, and be required to sit with a bunch of men wearing suits," unquote, expressing a concern that this would make her a visible target. What's more, Hall finds the implication that transgender individuals are somehow a danger to others reflected in the policies barring them from working with children or requiring a chaperone to use the restroom to be particularly offensive and dehumanizing. She says it sends a message that trans members are untrustworthy, which is a toxic notion for those trying to reconcile their gender identity with their faith. It's important to note that these policy changes come even as the church has made public efforts over the last decade to show greater compassion toward LGBTQ members. However, critics argue that these new rules undermine those efforts by creating an environment that feels anything but welcoming for transgender individuals. Matthew Bowman, a scholar of Mormon studies, explained that while these guidelines are unsurprising, given the church's historical stance on LGBTQ issues, they are still painful for many members. He noted that this lack of flexibility could lead to further disenfranchisement among those who have been holding out hope for a more inclusive church. Despite this, Lori Hall is alienating younger generations who may not be willing to accept such rigid, draconian policies. She suggests that this could lead to significant loss of membership and engagement, a trend she believes is entirely avoidable if the church could adopt a more inclusive stance. As the Mormon Church grapples with these complex issues, the conversation is far from over. We will continue to monitor the story and provide updates as new developments unfold. RFM, you made a facial expression when the Elder Holland image went up on the screen, when it said that these kinds of policies sort of distinguishing between a standard member of the church and those who are transgender might end up making them a target. And I'd love to know the look, if you were sort of wondering what the connection was in terms of that, or if there was something else maybe on your mind. I was going to speak to it if it was somewhere along the lines of what I think you were thinking.
Well, from my point of view, you kind of froze there for a few seconds, and I think that may have been what registered on my face as opposed to Elder Holland. It does seem to me that if they're going to be consistent about this whole bathroom thing, I mean, was there ever a time when the church recommended that gay men go to the women's room and gay women go to the men's room?
Yeah, it's sort of the same thing, right? You'd have people in there who are attracted to the other people that are in the restroom.
I mean, isn't that where this is coming from? And if so, it would seem consistency.
That's their motivation.
Yeah, consistency would suggest that they do the same thing for homosexuals, but I don't think that's a good thing. I just think it points out the inconsistency of what they're doing with trans people.
Yeah, by the way, I'm not saying that that's how it is in reality. I'm saying that what you're hitting on, which is that the church would be afraid of. What are the things that it's afraid of that it creates these policies? And whatever those things are, there are other situations that would constitute the exact same sort of risk. And the church doesn't seem to even have a second thought about those ones.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Rebecca?
Yeah, I have several thoughts. I could spend the rest of the newscast probably talking about this, but I will not. I know that I personally, on the day that the updates were made public, had two people reach out to me and say that this was it and they were resigning. One said, my 16-year-old child has asked me if we can finally just be done. And she said yes. And it was her birthday the next day. And she said, we're going to resign together. And this is just finally it. I have another acquaintance who, for a long time, because of family dynamics, has remained in, even though she also has a child affected by this. But this was finally it, although heartbreaking because of mixed faith marriage. And it's going to cause problems. But she could no longer, in good conscience, remain where her child she saw was actually in danger. And these are two people that I personally was aware of. And then if you look on social media over and over again, I can't even tell you how many I've seen where people have finally said, that's it, I'm out. I don't know what the church was thinking. I honestly can't imagine. It's like November 5th all over again is how I look at it. Do you guys see it that way almost?
I'll say this, the reason we covered the story this week, I mean, we had announced it last week, but in all of the pushback through major news outlets or platforms, and also a lot of the word that was coming out from folks who had sort of endured this as another moment, as you point out, very comparable to the November 5th, 2015 policy changes that excluded the children of LGBT or lesbian and gay folks specifically. And, 3.5 years later, to remove that, sort of the lashback that the community gave. And this is another one of those moments where when those came out, it was quite obvious that it had caused further damage in this community, and that people who were anywhere near the fence are now sort of jumping over and saying, that's it. This is enough. I've endured these kinds of things enough times in Mormonism.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing all over social media. Two more thoughts that I have. One is I thought this was a really good and unfortunate observation that I came across on social media. This is the end to nuanced bishops. As we report on these kinds of things, progressive bishops, whatever word you want to use, bishops that try to make a difference, that try to include, that try to do something that maybe is on the fringes, the edges, to help people and make them feel a part of the Ward family. This is the end of that, because they've made it pretty clear now in the policy that the bishops are either going to have to say, I'm not following that, or they're going to have to say, I'm sorry, from now on, I have to follow this. You can no longer go to Relief Society, or you can no longer do this. So it'll be really interesting to see the reaction of these bishops that I consider heroes, because it seems like they are trying to carve out a space for everyone in a Ward family, and now their hands are being tied. The other thing I came across on social media I thought was interesting is this idea that could this be a foreshadowing for Oakes's presidency? We all get the sense that President Nelson is, going to turn 100, and perhaps things will be turning over within this next year. Could this be something that is a foreshadowing of what we're going to see with Oakes? I don't know. Have you guys thought about that at all?
I had not, actually, but I think it's a great insight. I think it's 2 weeks from today, if my math is correct, that President Nelson will turn 100, should he make it.
Mm-hmm.
And Elder Oakes, obviously Elder Nelson is in decline. He can't do as much as he used to, and power, like nature, abhors a vacuum. So I'm sure that Elder Oakes is making his wishes and will known and manifest.
Yeah, it's like a power vacuum, kind of, when you have a leader at the top that's very infirm. We have seen this before. And it seems like when there's this power vacuum, like you said, there's a power grab by some of the other people. So I don't know. That's just something that a few people have brought up to say, I wonder if this is just foreshadowing what's coming. And it's already sort of slowly being enacted. So I don't know. Either way, it just doesn't bode well. And it's really sad.
And even if President Nelson were totally with it, I don't think he's like President Hinckley, where you would look at this and say, there's no way President Nelson would ever have signed off on these. I think this is completely what he would have signed off on, especially since he was almost certainly the moving force behind the 2015 policy of exclusion.
Yep.
I'm having a lot of glitch issues on my end, so hopefully what I say next, it comes out in full. But when I look at this situation, and I think like they are really more, the church leaders through policies and procedures are more inclusive of convicted child molesters and murderers who come back out of prison and want to go to church than they are towards the transgender community. And when you tell somebody you're welcome, like we do want you here, but you literally are going to run into obstacles no matter what you do. And some of them will even be beyond what would a rational person would think is even reasonable for any fears that you might have. And what it ends up looking like is that the church would prefer to get as far away from folks who are transgender than they would those who really are a danger and a threat to kids and other adults at the ward level.
Yeah, for instance, Lori Lee Hall, who was there in your clip. I think she used to be an architect for the church or something, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But yes, so
former bishop and stake president too, I think.
She's a transitioned woman. And so then she would normally be going to elders quorum, right? Except for the fact, right, that you have to get area presidency approval. And then according to the new policy, your participation, her participation in priesthood, according to that policy, will be limited and rare. is what it says. And I don't know what that means because they don't define it. Does that mean she cannot attend Elders Quorum?
I think a lot of it, we don't know, and perhaps it is up to interpretation, but I know that people aren't fully, I don't think they are aware of how this impacts them. I'm always over on the faithful Reddit subs and social media, and there was one really heartbreaking post where a transitioned woman wrote, "Oh, I'm just fine. I'm in my ward. My bishop knows me, loves me. I get to go to Relief Society. I'm sure this will have nothing to do with me." And then someone wrote under that in response, "You need to read the policy and you need to read, some of the other supplemental materials about it." And then a little ways down on the thread, this person wrote back and said, "I'm in tears. I now see that I probably will not be able to participate in the way that I love to participate and contribute in the way that I love to contribute." So I think people are just barely starting to figure out what this actually means.
When I look at this new set of guidelines closely, what it seems to be doing is saying, for people like Lori Lee Hall, you can't be in Relief Society, and you really can't be in Elders Quorum either. There's no place for you in this church, is what these guidelines amount to.
Yep. Do you feel there'll be any kind of backlash? I know some people brought up, will sports teams refuse to play BYU? Will, as word of this update gets out, do you think there'll be any kind of backlash like that?
That I have no idea about. I think we're already experiencing a significant backlash from members of the church who, back in 2015, they were in the center of the church. And 2015 comes along, and a lot of people who are on the outside of the church, they leave the church. And the people who are on the inside, like these people, they get pushed out to the boundary. Now they're on the boundary of the church. Now this comes along, and now they're gone. And this happens over and over again. And the church is just hemorrhaging members for no good reason except for its own bigotry.
Yeah, the other thing too, when you guys mentioned like how are they going to, they give all these rules, and some of these rules in terms of the one you pointed out, RFM, you can come to these things, but it's going to be rare. It's not going to happen very often, and nobody knows what that means. But I have a hunch the brethren know what that means, and they do the thing they always do, which is put into formalized opinion the things that you don't want to get in trouble over, or at least not have it be as severe. And then you let the stake presidents to let the bishops know what it is, sort of your expectation. And that'll always come through a 70 who's meeting with the stake presidency. And then it sort of removes the top 15 from having said it directly. And it's really just 170's opinion, even if it happens with every 70 across the church.
As to what rare and limited mean?
Correct.
Yeah. At a minimum, it doesn't mean that you get to attend as much as you otherwise would. It's more rare. It's more limited, right?
Yeah. Sort of sad. Anything else from you guys on this story?
I was going to say one more thing. I was going to say, I believe it's a huge miscalculation on the church's part. I believe there was a day where parents and ward members would go along with something like this at the expense of their child or their neighbor or their loved one. I don't see that so much anymore. People, even ward members who are now understanding and comfortable and friendly with transitioned individuals because they're part of their ward family, a lot of them are not going to stand for this. I think it's a miscalculation.
Yeah, once again, I will say it that when it comes to making decisions, the church not only tends to make bad decisions, it makes decisions that are so bad I couldn't have even conceived of them in advance. There's no way before this happened I would have ever thought that the church would come out with guidelines on trans people saying these kinds of things, including you can't hold a teaching calling, all the things that are in there, which are so insulting and so dehumanizing to this entire community. And why? For what purpose? Why? Because the Book of Mormon says that all are alike unto me? Well, I guess not. Not in the modern Mormon church anyway.
Don't you think it's strange that the church has to sort of learn the same lesson over and over and over again? And as you point out, it's almost like they get in a room, the top 15 of them. And we had seen where it felt like there was being progress made. The Bishop Osler had the interview where he interviewed the convert who was transgender, and she seemed to feel like the church almost bent over backwards to let her in. And Bishop Osler felt like she was going to have a good experience going forward. And now again, with these changes, those will impact folks like her. It's almost like these men get into a room and sort of go around the room and say, how can we make people's lives harder? How can we make things more difficult on human beings who are already having a difficult time?
Yeah.
It's really sad to see grown men handle things in that way and then put these rules into place, and then they disappear. They don't talk about it. They don't stand in front of a camera and say, hey, here, everybody, here's what we were thinking. I know it looks bad, but here's where our mindset is. And if there was genuine expression of like, hey, there's a blind spot here, and maybe if you think about this, we're actually doing something that's helpful, but they know that's not what the response is, and they stay as far away from being accountable to the damage they do in the wake of these policy changes that seem to come out every once in a while, that seem to push members to reestablish who's in and who's out.
To try and give a fuller picture of things. I know that we're in a space where we typically deal with this side of the issue, right? And yet we have to admit and we have to acknowledge that there's lots and lots of people who are lobbying and expressing their discontent to the leadership of the church about having trans people in their ward. You know, it's not just one way. It's not just one message they're getting. They're getting lots of messages from a lot of other people. And apparently they are deciding to bend to the will of those people as opposed to taking care of the members of the church who are trans.
Yeah, and there were
Jacob
quite a number.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say there are quite a number of videos from content creators on the faithful side that are, supportive of this.
Right.
They express that they know that this may be hard, but this is what needs to be done, that kind of thing. So my question is, where is the statement from ally and church spokesman Aaron Sherinian? I'd love to see what our church spokesman, who is a known ally of the LGBTQ community, what does he think about these new changes?
Yeah, he's going to have to make a decision sooner or later to fish or cut bait.
I'll say this, then we'll go to the next story. It seems as though the kind of things that Jacob Hansen and others were saying not too long ago about how confused they were and sort of urging kind of this groundswell of Orthodox members reaching out to their leadership to say that they were confused by this and needed some resolution. This, at least in part, seems to be that further instruction that they were asking for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's go to our next story. I believe it is Radio Free Mormon.
It is. Thank you very much. Once again, we're going to go back to the McKinney, Texas Temple in Fairview. I live not too far from the Seattle Temple, which is in Bellevue. So this isn't the first time they name a temple for a different city than the one they're building it in. This is the McKinney, Texas Temple. We did an episode about this on Mormonish. And we recorded this last Friday morning. It went up around Friday, around noon. And we went over some of this. I'll give an abbreviated form of it tonight. Also, I've done some additional research, which I think you will find interesting. But to recap, when we last left Fairview, the vote at the Fairview, Texas Town Council meeting on August 6th, 2024 was a 0-7 unanimous vote to deny the LDS Church's application without prejudice. This means the LDS Church can reapply at any time. Of course, they're not going to reapply. They're going to sue. What happened next? The next morning on Wednesday, August 7th, 2024, the town council received a letter via registered mail. And this was in, hang on a second here. This is what happens when I can actually do the slides. The mayor's office received notice of the impending suit. There was a notice of an impending suit that was received. That was the mail. One day after the town council voted to deny the church special approval to build the temple. This is from the Dallas News. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are set to file a lawsuit against the town of Fairview, said Fairview Mayor Henry Lesner. And here is part of that letter. Now, this is a cover letter because the city attorney, the town attorney, technically the assistant town attorney, sent a cover letter to Landon Brophy in response to his request to try and get this 2-page notice of intent to file a lawsuit. This is part of that 4-page letter. And down there at the bottom, you can see that there is a footnote. And the footnote is about the same size font as the body of the letter. So it doesn't look that much like a footnote. I went ahead and, the next slide, Bill. Boom, baby. I went ahead and did that so we could actually read it. And this is important because this Notice of intent to file lawsuit is a law firm in Dallas representing two individuals, as opposed to the church coming in and filing a lawsuit. This is a law firm, which is a lawyer. There's a lawyer in the law firm who apparently is a member of the church, and he's representing two individuals who are both members of the church. And here's what the city attorney or assistant city attorney says in footnote 1. Also, the town of Fairview is uncertain that said August 7th, 2024 is sent on behalf of any residents of the town of Fairview. As of this writing, the two named persons alleged to be members of the organization, that means the church, are not known to be residents of Fairview and do not appear to own any real property in the town of Fairview, according to county deed records. Rebecca did a little bit of additional sleuthing, found out that these two individuals actually live in Allen, Texas. Now, there's a signature line. It's David Overcash, the assistant town attorney, who's the one who signed this. I think that's a great name for a lawyer, Overcash. I wish that were my last name. That'd be awesome. Okay, and this is the notice that was sent to the city, registered mail, and emailed to them the following day. It's titled Notice of Violation of Texas Religious Freedom and Restoration Act and Preservation Notice. Dear Mr. McCoy, Mayor Lessner, and Fairview Town Council members, this firm represents Bryce Peterson and Joseph Walker. And then it says, and other similarly situated individuals. Yeah. Who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This firm does not represent the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or any church entity, only individual members whose rights have been violated by the town of Fairview. This letter is to serve as a formal notice of a claim pursuant to the Texas Religious Freedom and Restoration Act. This is where they have to file notice of a claim on the city prior to filing a lawsuit. It is a statutory requirement, and that's why they're doing this. The fact that they had this ready to go the following day indicates to me that they already knew what the city council was going to do. They had this in their back pocket, and they filed it or sent it in the very following day. They had this ready before, obviously. Pursuant to the notice requirement in section 110.006A, we give notice that the town of Fairview has violated the TRFRA, which is the Texas version of ARLUPA, in the following ways. Number 1, Bryce Peterson, Joseph Walker, and other similarly situated individuals' free exercise of religion is substantially burdened. They have to allege that because that's what the statute says. Is substantially burdened by an exercise of the town of Fairview's mayor and town council's governmental authority in denying an application from their church to build a temple, conditional use, and there's the cup number. 2, the town's refusal to, and cup is conditional use permit. 2, the town's refusal to grant the permit is and will be a substantial burden to Mr. Peterson's, Mr. Walker's, and other people, their free exercise of religion by prohibiting them from worshiping in a temple near their homes. The humanity. Worship in the temple is the highest form of worship that members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can engage in, although they can't really explain to the public what it consists of. And the town's refusal to grant the permit has unduly burdened these individuals' worship without showing a compelling governmental interest. And 3, the town's refusal to approve the permit prevents the McKinney Temple from being built in a timely manner in the town of Fairview. Bryce Peterson, Joseph Walker, and others have to drive to Dallas, the nearest temple to worship, instead of a temple within approximately 3 to 6 miles of their homes in Fairview. So I'm guessing one lives 3 miles away from the proposed temple site. The other one lives 6 miles away from the proposed temple site, hence the 3 to 6 miles of their homes in Fairview. This is, oh, and by the way, their homes are not in Fairview. This sentence is constructed in such a way as to give the implication that these two people, Bryce Peterson and Joseph Walker, have homes in Fairview, which I think is an allegation that led the city or the town assistant attorney to do the research and find out that they actually don't appear to live in Fairview and they don't have any property in Fairview either. So this appears to be an attempt on the part of this letter to give an incorrect idea about where these people live. As I said, Rebecca did some research, found out they live in Allen, not in Fairview. It's not that far away, but it's not in Fairview. Instead of a temple within approximately 3 to 6 miles of their homes in Fairview. This is a substantial burden, on Bryce Peterson, Joseph Walker, and other similarly situated individuals' free exercise of religion, and has caused them damage and will continue to cause them damage. And then there's a big paragraph here, which is the preservation notice saying preserve everything you've got because it'll be evidence in the upcoming lawsuit, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's signed by this fellow, Matthew R. McCarley, who's the attorney who's representing these two individuals. Okay, so the reason I'm making so much fun about this substantial burden is here's the Dallas, Texas temple, okay? This is the one they have to drive to. How far is it from Fairview to Dallas? I'm going to go to this one, excuse me. All right, here is Fairview. By the way, let me go back here just so you can see where it is that Fairview is located. You can see it in the upper top right of the map, and you have to swing up right and head down the main route. And then there's Allen. Can you see Allen down there? 5.9 miles from Fairview to Allen. This is important because Allen is actually on the way to Dallas. It's on the way to the Dallas temple. So Allen, where these two people live, is between Fairview and the Dallas temple. That becomes important for this calculation. The distance from Fairview to the Dallas temple is 22.7 miles, or roughly 23 miles, right? There's Fairview, and there's the Dallas, Texas temple. The next one is the distance from Allen, the city of Allen, to the Dallas temple is 17 miles. So it's approximately 6 miles shorter, right? 6 miles shorter to the Dallas, Texas temple than it is from Allen to the Dallas, Texas temple. Does that make sense? So these individuals only have to drive 17 miles to get to the Dallas, Texas temple, and they're crying like they have to pull hand carts across the plains. So the swing on this, the distance from Fairview to Dallas temple, 22.7 miles. The distance from Allen to the Dallas temple is 17 miles. So the difference is a swing of 5.7 miles. We'll round it up to 6 miles, okay? The swing meaning that it's 11 miles. So i.e., the plaintiffs would have to drive, or the one who lives 6 miles away from where the Fairview temple is, the plaintiff would have to drive 6 miles to the proposed Fairview temple instead of driving 17 miles to the Dallas temple. Does this make sense so far? This means the plaintiff would have to drive 11 miles further to get to the Dallas temple than to the Fairview temple. That's why I'm saying it has an 11-mile swing to it. So what they're complaining about is having to drive 11 miles. That's what this substantial burden is about, is driving 11 miles. Note the swing on the plaintiff who lives 3 miles from the Fairview temple site is 17 miles. That's the swing. Or in other words, he has to drive 20 miles to the Dallas temple instead of 3 miles to the Fairview temple. So you can see the swing would be 17 miles by the same math, right? I'm going to set it down. I'm going to write this in stone. And we'll see if any judge dares disagree with me. Driving 17 miles to a temple instead of 6 miles to a temple does not constitute a substantial burden on plaintiff's free exercise of religion. And even if we go with the other one, who lives 3 miles away from the proposed temple site in Fairview, and driving 20 miles to a temple instead of 3 miles to a temple does not constitute a substantial burden on plaintiff's free exercise of religion. I think you're going to have to search long and hard, high and low to find a judge who's going to agree that your free exercise of religion is being substantially burdened by having to drive 20 miles. And here, this has to do with something that we talked about. We didn't really have the answer to. I did some additional research on it since Saturday or since Friday. It has to do with the timing to bring a lawsuit. Now, you have to file a notice before you file the lawsuit, okay? But Section 110.006, this is the Texas code, notice and right to accommodate. A person may not bring an action to assert a claim under this chapter, and this is the same chapter that they're bringing the lawsuit under, so it applies. Unless 60 days before bringing the action, the person gives written notice to the government agency by certified mail, return requested. That's what this notice is. So now that they filed this notice, they have to wait at least 60 days before filing the lawsuit. Okay? Does that make sense? On the other hand, there's a statute of limitations as well, and that statute of limitations is a year. So a person must bring an action to assert a claim for damages under this chapter not later than 1 year after the date, and that's the actual lawsuit. So then the question is, what happens if they wait until the last day of the year to file their notice? Well, then the statute gives them an additional 75 days to file their lawsuit. So really it ends up being, as long as you file your notice within a year, you've got a year plus 75 days to file your lawsuit. Oh, I don't think let me see here if, yeah, that's in section B. I didn't highlight it. Mailing notice under section 110.006 tolls the limitations period established under the section until the 75th day after the date on which the notice was mailed. Okay, so that clears up some questions. They have up to a year to file their notice, and up to a year plus a little bit more if they file their notice at the end of the year to file their lawsuit. And this may be why it is we haven't heard anything from the church yet, and why it is a little bit strange that they went so quickly and filed this the next day. They didn't have to. It was certainly precipitous on their part, and I think that shows that they were trying to make a point. They're making a political point rather than a legal maneuver here. To file their notice the very following day, they're sending a message with that instead of waiting and maybe thinking about it a little bit more before they file their notice, because this notice doesn't seem to set forth grounds for a lawsuit that's going to win anywhere, in my humble opinion. So it's also this section that talks about the free exercise of religion. We've talked about what that means, but here's what the statute in Texas says it means. Free exercise of religion means an act or refusal to act. Oh, that would be like Jehovah's Witnesses not say in the Pledge of Allegiance, right? If refusal to act. But here it's an act. Free exercise of religion means an act or refusal to act that is substantially motivated by sincere religious belief. In determining whether an act or refusal to act is substantially motivated by sincere religious belief under this chapter, it is not necessary to determine that the act or refusal to act is motivated by a central part or central requirement of the person's sincere religious belief. So it doesn't have to be core, but it does have to be a sincere religious belief. Okay? All right. An application under section 110.002. This chapter applies to any ordinance, rule, order, decision, practice, or other exercise of governmental authority that would apply to the city council or the town council denying the church's request for their CUP to build a temple there. And finally, subject to subsection B, this is section 110.003, religious freedom protected. A government agency may not substantially burden a person's free exercise of religion. So that's what they have to show. The plaintiffs have to show that their free exercise of religion has been substantially burdened by having to drive 11 more minutes, or in the worst case, 20 more minutes to get to a temple than they would have to if they were allowed to build a temple in Fairview. Now, does anybody have any comments about that so far? Then I've got a little bit of a video to show.
It just seems absolutely ridiculous to me. I don't know. I'm sorry. I know you can sue over anything. My question for you, though, RFM, is does this then tie up the town? Do they have to address this? Will they have to go to court? Will they have to allocate resources toward this?
Mhm.
Could this be a smokescreen while the church prepares its actual lawsuit? I just can't figure this out. It's not at all what we expected.
It's very strange. And I imagine that the church is aware of it. I think they were aware of it before the notice was sent, based upon your research that some of these individuals, I think one of the plaintiffs is an executive stake secretary or has
The
been.
lawyer is in Allen. All of them are in Allen. They all are connected to either stake level executive secretary or ward clerk or state clerk. They seem to be in the fraternity of clerks somehow.
So it's hard to think that the executive state clerk went off and did this without telling the state president, who he's glued to the hip most of the time, right? He's the guy who makes all the appointments. And then if there's an appointment, he'll sit out in the couch just to make sure there's somebody close by. You know, it's not exactly two people in the room, but there's somebody close by in case anybody needs any help. But yeah, they're very, very closely connected. So it's hard to think the state president didn't know it. If the state president knew about it, it's hard to think the area authority didn't know about it. And if the church didn't come in and say, no, don't do this, then I think the church is tacitly okay with this.
I think it fails in another way too. The town didn't say no to a temple. They said no to a temple that violates zoning conditions. And hence, when you go to court with this argument from this announced upcoming lawsuit, it seems like you're arguing that these guys won't build my temple. Well, they're happy to let you build your temple. You just got to get the height down. Now, whose problem is the height? Oh, that's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It actually seems like they would almost need to sue the church for not building the temple, because the temple could get built if it would stay within the height it's supposed to. And then you'd have essentially one party suing the other in a ridiculous lawsuit. So, I
Right.
don't know
Well,
what to
there
say
would
about
be
that.
issues related to an individual suing a church about this issue as opposed to the government, mainly because the government is the one that has the burden of, playing fair and square and not infringing on anybody's religious liberty. But I hear what you're saying. I hear the point that you're making. Yeah, all the church has to do is just say, okay, we'll build a temple about the size of the Dallas temple, and they could already have it, or at least have it under
Yeah.
construction. So, yeah, and that may be another element of the substantial burden that will be talked about in this. By the way, the whole thing is that I predict that the city attorney is going to make at least that argument that I made about this is not a substantial burden because here's how far it is, blah, blah, blah. And here's the swing, right? And we're talking about 11 minutes, and that's not a substantial burden. Of course, then the plaintiffs will come back and they won't use that exact metric. They'll take those numbers and they'll use percentages. And they'll say, yeah, well, it used to be 6 minutes. It would have been 6 minutes for this guy to drive to Fairview, but now he's got to drive 17 minutes. So that's almost 3 times as much. See, that's what they'll say. 3 times.
Sounds worse.
Yes, exactly.
Sounds a
Even though we're
lot
talking
worse.
about the same statistics. That's why there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? I don't think it's going to impress a judge, but I predict they'll do that. All right, are we ready for this great this video? Because I was looking on YouTube yesterday, trying to find out if my next Brush Up Your Shakespeare was up yet. And it is up this morning, thanks to Bill Reel, by the way. And I saw this on Austin, Texas temple groundbreaking. Apparently it was announced a couple years ago in 2022. They're getting around 3 days ago, might be 4 days now. I think it was last Friday, to the groundbreaking ceremony. And I watched it and I found some interesting clips from it. In fact, we've been talking about, at least we did last Friday, right, Rebecca? About it wasn't that long ago that we told stories about people who underwent great sacrifice to get to a temple, who didn't have one near to them. And those were put forward as faith-promoting stories and how blessed they are for their sacrifice. We even have a hymn that says sacrifice brings forth the blessings of heaven. And sure enough, one of the speakers here talks about how it used to be when they were in Austin, and there was only one temple in the state. It was Dallas, and how they used to have to drive 7 hours round trip, 3.5 hours there, 3.5 hours back. And what a blessing it was to them, and how much God blessed them and their family for doing it. I'm trying to push this. Yeah, you got the magic button there, Bill. This is about a minute long, this clip, once it starts. And it's going to be so worth the wait, you won't believe it.
In 1988, when we first moved to Texas, the Austin metro area had one stake. Now, a stake is a geographic area made up of about 6 to 12 congregations. And there was one temple in Texas located in Dallas. Prior to the Dallas temple, church members from this state traveled to Mesa, Arizona to attend the temple. Very often, temple trips were organized and buses chartered to make that 7-hour round trip drive to Dallas for temple worship. Members of the church have many fond memories of making those trips and the deep spiritual connection to God that came to them from those experiences. Oftentimes, we would take our little children with us to Dallas. We would do something fun with the kids while taking turns worshiping in the house of the Lord. Our children began to look forward to those trips, but more importantly, it kept the gospel light shining and glowing brighter in our home.
Well, there'll be no more gospel light shining brighter in our homes because now we want to be able to drive 6 minutes to a temple instead of 20. What do you think about that, Rebecca?
I think they need to get their stories straight. Here you have a lawsuit that comes out on Wednesday that says, God damn it, I can't drive any farther than 2 minutes to the temple or I'm burdened. And then a few days later, you have somebody that says, oh, incredible rich blessings and spiritual experiences that we get from driving long distances. Which is it? That's what I want to know. I just think you can't make this stuff up, but amazing that you found that, RFM. I think that's great. I've been sharing that with all of my temple building residents and they just think that's hilarious.
I will tell you that those two individuals, and what are their names again? Hang on a second here. I want to make sure I get their names right? So let's see here. I want to try and Is it possible to go back on this, Bill?
Yep. Give me 1 second.
Suddenly it won't let me do anything with the slides. It doesn't like me.
Yeah, you can't do the video ones.
It was
So.
Bryce somebody. Oh, no. I wanted to go back slides.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. So if we can go back a few slides and find these guys' names,
Yeah,
because I
here.
want to.
Are you trying to get the names of the residents?
Yes.
Joseph Walker and Bryce. Sorry, I can't remember Bryce's last name.
Blankenagel?
Yeah, but it's Joseph
No,
Walker.
it wasn't Bryce Blankenagel.
No, it was not.
I was just saying
Hold
it, see
on.
if you were paying attention. Okay, that was good. That was good. Bryce Peterson and Joseph Walker.
Joseph Walker. Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure I have their names correct because I'm going to mock them mercilessly.
Oh, dear.
I mean, how on earth? These guys should be ashamed of themselves for complaining about having to drive 20 minutes to a temple when they want to have it 6 minutes away and saying they're substantially burdened in their free exercises of religion because of this. Honestly, when did the Mormons become such weenies? Bill, what do you think? Do you have any thoughts about this?
This reminded me of the other moment where Bednar says the size of our temples don't matter, and yet here we are arguing that the size of our spires matter and the height of our temple matters. And it just feels like Mormonism is a really unhealthy religion that tries to get its way and will use whatever loophole it can on one side, tight translation, and use whatever loophole it wants to on the other side when that's conducive to their argument, loose translation. And it seems like that's the kind of thing that's going on in Mormonism since its inception.
Well, it's funny you should mention Elder Bednar, because the same speaker a little bit later in his talk references Elder Bednar. And right after he quotes from President Nelson, he goes to Elder Bednar and he makes the same point once again, just using different words. And once again, this is just 3 days ago. This actually was it on the same date? No, this was a Friday, but it wasn't the same Friday that they received it in Fairview. It might have been a week later, but it's going on contemporaneously. And they're saying this at the Austin, Texas temple groundbreaking, no less. And if we could play that second clip, I think this is the second clip, Bill. And this is going to be even better than the first one. It's okay.
Yeah, families.
I like watching
President Russell M. Nelson, the prophet and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, has counseled, as evil intensified, there's nothing that will protect us more than regular time in the temple. He goes on to say, every time a temple is dedicated, more light comes into the world. Every time we go to the temple, our lives are reinforced by that light and by the covenants we make with God. Along the same lines, Elder David A. Bednar, an apostle of the church, has said, when a temple is built, it's not about the building for us. What is more important is how our hearts are changed as we learn about God and Jesus Christ and fill of their divine love.
Wait a second. What did he just say about Elder Bednar?
It's not about the building. Again, they need to get their notes together. They need to get on the same page. And I feel that they won't until they have something in the Liahona, some kind of article or answer to a question, or they mention it in conference. They have got to put it on the record that the size of the building does matter. It matters incredibly. And the distance that you have to drive matters. There's got to be a conference talk about that or something in the Liahona so that everybody can be on the same page.
I agree. And this is once again going to be another exhibit in the city's briefing on this lawsuit, I think.
Yeah, probably several cities who are aware of this clip, which is current, like you said, very recent, only a few days old.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So is that the end of my story? Go ahead.
It is
crazy.
Yep. Thanks. It will all make a great stack of evidence in the argument against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Rebecca, what do you have for us tonight?
Oh my goodness, those Mormon secret lives of the Mormon wives will not go away. I don't think I've ever seen the Streisand factor more in play. And that, if you don't know what that is where somebody says, like if someone in church says, don't ever read the CES letter. And everyone's like, what's the CES letter? And they go home and read it, right? Or when you were a youth and you'd go to a fireside and they'd say, don't neck or pet. And you're like, what's necking or petting, right? As soon as you bring it up, people are fascinated by it. And this is what is happening with this new documentary that is not documentary. It's more like a series that's going to be on Hulu coming out on the 6th of September. So very, very recently. It's called The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And it's about a group of TikTok moms in the last couple of years, really wildly popular. They had Mom Talk, and it all exploded a couple of years ago. Frankie Taylor Paul, or is it Taylor Frankie? Taylor Frankie Paul. Sorry, I got that reversed. Came out and said, oh, that things have gone wrong. There have been affairs and marriages are breaking up. Anyway, all this intrigue. And then suddenly we find out they're going to be on this new program that's coming out. Well, of course, the church is not happy because it has the word Mormon in it, right? And it seems to be about secret lives and wives. So we talked about this last week, but we're going to mention it again because the Mormon wives are lashing back. What they're lashing back against is this statement that the church made, where I'll just read it really quickly again, because it was really surprising that they would come out with this as a commentary on their church website. It says, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like other prominent global faith communities, often finds itself the focus of the attention of the entertainment industry. Some portrayals are fair and accurate, but others resort to stereotypes or gross misrepresentations that are in poor taste and have real-life consequences for people of faith. While this is not new, a number of recent productions depict lifestyles and practices that are blatantly inconsistent with the teachings of the church. Others irresponsibly mischaracterize the safety and conduct of volunteer missionaries. Now, we believe that statement is a direct result of a movie called Heretic that's coming out, starring the amazing Hugh Grant, about two sister missionaries that go into somebody's house and end up in trouble. We understand the fascination some in the media have with the church, but regret the portrayals often rely on sensationalism and inaccuracies that do not fairly and fully reflect the lives of the church members or the sacred beliefs they hold dear. Millions of church members around the world are deeply dedicated to family, fidelity, service, and the gospel of Jesus Christ. We invite all to consult reliable sources of information and listen to the voices and authentic experiences of individuals and families who find great joy and satisfaction in living these principles. The true story of our faith is best seen in the countless lives of those who strive daily to follow the Savior Jesus Christ. And of course, while we thought this was unusual, a lot of people also voiced their concern. Well, so wait, you don't want to hear my story? My story isn't baking cookies and family home evening and being the Relief Society president. There are a lot of stories that do not fit the perfect narrative that the church wishes was the only narrative. And this Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, I think, is one of them. So what happened is that faithful members kicked it into high gear, right? As far as warning people, Streisand effect, against this program. So I won't read all of this, but people are saying things like, as many of you know, this is a prominent LDS influencer. I'm a proud member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This week, Hulu will air a show called The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which claims to portray the lives of women in our faith. I want to share with you why this matters to me personally, why I believe it's important to be cautious. She goes on to say this is not an accurate reflection at all of Mormon women. And if anybody wants to know what women are really like, they can talk to her, message her personally. Again,
who is this, by the way?
I'm not going to give any names because I don't give names, but it's all over social media. And there were many posts like this, many of them. However, I did ask AI to make a perfect Mormon woman picture, and there it is. So in case you were wondering, it kind of does have that haunted look in their eyes, right? Like blink twice if you need help. Sorry, that was facetious. But
this
anyway,
influencer doesn't have anything to do with my joke about the wide-mouthed frog, does it?
No.
Okay.
Although they came out also talking about that. So what I'm saying is that into high gear, the
You
church.
knew who I meant.
What?
You knew who I meant. That's the whole
Of course
point.
I knew who you meant. You tell that joke over and over. I don't know if you're aware or not.
Once.
Once. I told it once. Okay. So anyway, I just think it's really funny. And I don't know what you guys think, that they're just so insistent that this program doesn't reflect Mormon women. And I'm telling you, these women are Mormon. And this is what they did. So I could also make the argument, this is what some people in the early church did too, huh? So
this is a huge no true Scotsman fallacy,
yes,
right?
Yes, good point. Do you want to explain what that is in case some people don't know?
Well, it means that the only true Mormons are the ones who do everything the church tells them to do.
Yep, that's right. But again, these are Mormon women. So I kind of went on social media and gathered a few quotes. So from the more faithful side, things like another tool Satan has access to ward off potential future members. Nothing new. I wouldn't touch this show with a long pole. Yuck. This is the kind of junk entertainment that both prophets and historians have warned us about. LOL.
Historian?
Yeah, I don't know. I would think the historians would know some of the similarities between.
Sounds like history to me.
That's what I was going to say. And people do make that connection. Oh, for sure. With the war on saints predicted in the scriptures, shows like this fuel the fire and means the second coming is close at hand. So this Hulu program may usher in the literal apocalypse and second coming. I'm not sure. Long story short, most of the women are excommunicated, inactive, or otherwise lapsed members who are in the TikTok space. One of the chief ones was into swinging. So ad hominem, this isn't true. This is the M. This is the adversary. The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. This 2-minute trailer is an example of how the LDS Church is being used for profit by those who have no ethics. I hope everyone here will speak out against this kind of vile entertainment. And then right underneath this post, somebody wrote, in all seriousness, if you are offended by this trailer, why post it for others to see?
She actually posted it, huh?
I know. I'm telling you, everybody is. And they're like, don't you dare watch this. But the pictures are so provocative. You have to arm yourself against evil. So you better watch just a little bit to make sure, that you can resist the rest. So somebody else made the comment then, the early church was wild. I would watch a show about 1830 Mormons all day long. So people are kind of in their mind kind of make this parallel because again, with their soft swinging, it was consenting adults in a marital relationship, consenting within that relationship to expand and open their marriage and be involved with other consenting adults. So I feel like there were times in church history, polyamory, where that was happening.
By the way, to your point, in Mormonism, as much as the members of the church are furious with these people who are having consensual intimacy in an open marriage, Mormonism was full of non-consensual intimacy in open marriages, and everybody defends the prophet when that's brought up. That seems so strange that in one instance it's like bad people, and then in another instance you're like, oh no, that man's good. He's just misunderstood.
No, you're absolutely right. It's all about consent. It's completely about, an open type marriage, and everybody within that relationship agrees to that. And so that is nobody's business except for Hulu's, I guess. Another person says people are missing the point on the storyline. This is the stuff that some of the members do keep secret. Nobody's going to watch a show about Sister Lindquist canning wheat on Tuesday and helping her kids color books on Sunday. Point taken. And typically these programs are about a more fringe element in any of the programs that you see, because they aren't going to follow somebody that's just in the mainstream. Somebody else points out one of the women featured is Demi Engman. Her husband is Brett Engman, a former BYU quarterback. Both are very nice people, are faithful members of the church, as far as this person knows. In other words, she plays on your team. This person is trying to push back on faithful members, saying, this isn't us. I suggest you reach out to her personally if you find her actions so deplorable. So you can see there's just a whole gamut of reactions to this. Someone else says there's a whole lot of spouse sharing going on in Nauvoo. This point is not escaping someone. This show really isn't that far off. The only difference is that they're not using God told me to as an explanation, and Joseph Smith did. And then finally, somebody said, if the church ever gets brave enough to release the William Clayton diaries, there's plenty of tea in there. There's the making of a very lucrative show. You wouldn't even need to write a script. All you'd have to do is quote from the original documents. So people are having a lot of fun trying to figure out exactly what this is. Well, my favorite comment, however, is this. I had to give it its own slide. This is from someone named Todd on Facebook. He says, I'd say that Hollywood's obsession with Mormon sex lives pales in comparison to any local LDS bishop. And I say boom to that, right?
Boy, that should be getting some applause, I think.
I'm giving it applause right there. I think that is absolutely the point. So, okay, all this backlash, people defending back and forth. Several articles come out as some of the women and a mom of one of the women, Frankie Taylor Paul, I got to get that right. Sorry, guys, comes out and speaks out over the hypocritical backlash and claims that a lot of sins are committed in church. So it's kind of like, don't throw stones at glass houses. Why don't you look at the beam in your own eye? No, I didn't say Moroni, I said your own eye.
And you said beam too. I love it when you get that backward.
I did. I said beam. Look at the beam in your own eye. I know. I always get it mixed up. So anyway, let's see what Taylor's mom, and I can't believe this is the mom. She looks like she's about the same age as these women. Let's see what she says on TikTok about the church's statement kind of coming after them. If you can play that, Bill.
Yeah, here it is. It may take a moment. There we go.
I'm sure you have heard a lot about the secret lives of Mormon wives. I know I have. My daughter Taylor's in the show. But what really makes me irritated recently is that I see all the backlash from them, their comments that they receive on social media. I don't know if their families get it as well as we do, but I recently received one that I thought was very interesting and contradicting, that they stated that we, my family and I, should distance ourselves from being with the church and being Mormon because we're not Mormon enough. And that's pretty hypocritical, coming and saying that on somebody's page and stating other things like these don't align with the teachings. Well, either does that. For somebody to come and say that I shouldn't be a member of the church because I'm not Mormon enough or I sin. Let me tell you, a lot of things happen in the church and a lot of sins are committed every single day and nobody is perfect. So before somebody should go out and judge somebody else or state that they shouldn't be Mormon or they're not active enough and all the other stuff that comes with it, maybe they should look within themselves and see if they're doing the things that align with the church.
Yeah.
I'm talking and I'm muted. Sorry. So that's Taylor's mom lashing back at the statement from the church. Bill, what do you think about that?
First off, you're right about the age thing. I thought I was listening to like a 22-year-old or something, and she must be 45, 50 minimum. Anyway, I think this is the standard parental response, which is, before you judge my kid, look in the mirror. Mormonism is this formalistic, religion that has all these rules and all these regulations. And there's this idea in high demand fundamentalist religions of creating costly signals. I signal to you that I'm making sacrifices and living in the box that Mormonism is. And I'm looking at you and making sure you are signaling back that you're in the box. And if one of us doesn't live our lives in the way that the entity says, even though really both of us aren't, but if one of us is observedly, outwardly not living it, then the system is sort of designed to judge that person and shame them. And so you get a lot of Latter-day Saints right now who are looking down upon this, and like I said earlier, are completely unwilling to touch the life of Joseph Smith, which is all of this plus a bunch of unhealthy grooming and non-consensual actions. And it's ironic which things Mormons judge and shame and which things they sweep under the rug.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, mainly financial sins, A-OK in the Mormon church, as long as you're not stealing directly from the church itself. Sexual sins, no. Even pseudo-sexual sins, even soft sexual sins.
Yeah.
No, you can't do that. I understand. I think I understand where the mom's coming from in that TikTok video. I agree with her. On the other hand, it isn't obvious that this is being made in order to be titillating, to work against the grain of what the general expectation is of what Mormons do and what Mormon women do. I mean, that's the whole sell on this, right? That's the whole sizzle, to quote Tim Ballard.
Yeah, it's the sizzle on everything. I mean,
that's the whole point.
Secret Lives of Amish Wives, it would be the same thing, right? Or anybody. You just want to see what's really going on. You want to kind of pull back the curtain and see what's really happening. So, and I've also heard people say this isn't even about the Latter-day Saints because it's called Mormon. So,
okay, great.
Yeah, they're trying everything. So we'll see, but it's coming out on the 6th. So if we can go back to the slides really quick, I have a couple little comparisons there, and we'll also talk really briefly about. Okay, so a couple more quotes where they're just saying, just watch us. I mean, it's going to be just fine. I won't go through everything here. And I do want to point out that the LDS Church has their own influencers. that are very wildly successful. I don't know if you know that, the mommy blogs, the mommy TikTokers, a lot of them are LDS ballerina farms, and they are definitely portraying a lifestyle, maybe more of a trad wife kind of a scenario. We've talked about that before. These guys are influencers. If you can see my graphic right here, this was a temple open house that was at the Red Cliffs Temple. And if you read right there, it says, this is an influencer event. They encouraged
Influencer only.
influencers to come the day before the normal open house started, and they would take pictures, and the influencers would post about it, and they would blog about it. So the church itself definitely knows how to work influencers, and it's a whole world. If you're not aware, there are some wildly successful LDS influencers out there. And Alyssa Grenfell did a little short video, very quick, to kind of explain what this means. So I feel like the LDS Church can't really be pointing at these secret lives of secret Mormon moms when their own influencers are out there kind of doing the same thing and raking in huge money. So if you can play this really quick, Bill, we'll see what Alyssa says about influencers.
Have you ever wondered why there are so many Mormon influencers, or influencers who are no longer Mormon but definitely used to be Mormon? One theory I've heard over and over again is that Mormon girls were taught to journal growing up, and that journaling from a young age grew up to chronicling their lives online. But to me, this always seemed like a super weak theory for such a huge phenomenon. My theory is that the Mormon Church, which has an estimated $230 billion, is paying them money, but they're doing it very sneakily. The secret lies in advertising revenue, and you can see here that the Mormon Church's search terms have a much higher ad spend than similar terms from different religions and from different geographic regions. This ad spend makes it wildly more lucrative to be a Mormon Utah influencer than it does to be a LA influencer or a New York influencer. Honestly, though, it's complicated enough that you'll have to just watch my YouTube video that explains the theory about how the Mormon Church gets its wealth into the hands of these Mormon influencers.
Yeah, she does have a whole video on it, but there is this algorithm there, and we're talking major money. Are you aware at all of this whole world of the LDS influencer and how the church utilizes them? Like you just saw, come to our influencers only temple open house so that you can post about it.
I'm not so aware of it, actually. I have trouble keeping track of just the post-Mormon.
It's
scene.
true.
Hey,
There is
Bill,
that.
you're an influencer. Were you invited to that thing down there at the Washington Temple?
Yeah, you're
That's in
right
your neck of the
there.
woods, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
I
Sorry.
was not invited to it, and I also don't think we're getting any kind of money near what that they're getting. So somehow the
No.
church has a way to go, we're going to pay the good guys, and we're going to make sure Google is requested not
Yep.
to pay the baddies. So
Yep. I actually feel that's what all the billions are for. SEO. I'm not kidding. That's
Mhm.
make or break these days. So anyway, all right, let's go quickly to the next slide as we finish out here. So the other part of the church's statement, of course, was about the movie Heretic. The church's statement said, we don't like the way missionaries are characterized as perhaps being in an unsafe situation. And now this movie is coming out in November. It stars Hugh Grant. It's about two sister missionaries. The actresses portraying these characters, I believe they are or were LDS. I think
Yes.
were LDS. I don't know if they ever were missionaries, but they were LDS. And of course, they knock on a door. Hugh Grant says, of course, my wife's home. Can't you smell that lovely blueberry pie baking? Come in. She's just in the kitchen. And it goes from bad to worse there as they suddenly realize there's no blueberry pie. It's a candle. And they're stuck, right?
Mhm.
So the church in their statement basically said, this is not fair. This is not right. This is not real. Our missionaries are not ever in compromising situations. Well, I think all of us are not naive enough to believe that. I think we all know anecdotally stories of missionaries that have been in extremely compromising situations. In fact, our Mormonish episode that's coming out on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time is about a missionary who was kidnapped and assaulted and held in his apartment and suffered lifelong PTSD from it. Just absolutely horrifying. He reached out and contacted us after the first newscast that we talked about Heretic. So for the church to say you can't show this, that's ridiculous. This is real life. And of course, Hugh Grant and his people and some of the actresses here said, no, we were very respectful. We didn't try to make this a joke. We tried to be very realistic in our portrayal of this. And I think this is more of a psychological thriller. That's kind of the sense I get. But it's just interesting how the church is kind of trying to dog whistle to its members. Don't watch The Secret Lives. Don't watch Heretic. We don't want you to get any wrong ideas about anything, when the reality, I think, is maybe more closely aligned with what you're seeing there in the media. And of course, how many of us can forget the Saratov approach, right? Did either of you see that?
No, but I heard about it when it was happening.
The church promoted that movie, and it was about a true story of two missionaries that were kidnapped in Russia, held. It was very dramatic the way the Lord intervened to rescue them. It had a happy ending, but again, it's okay if the church puts it out, but if Hollywood tries to put it out, it obviously has an evil intent. It's the adversary. It's going to usher in the second coming. So interesting. So at the same time, their commentary statement on social media and these programs that's coming out, you have Elder Bednar at a fireside, and he's talking about, I don't know if you guys remember 10 years ago, if you can think that far back, this article is called Then and Now, a look at Elder Bednar's invitation 10 years ago to flood the earth with social media. He basically came out and said, we've got to get on social media. We've got to tell people who we are. Every member a missionary, everybody get out there. So they're kind of having this little interview with him to see, how did that work out? Here we are 10 years later.
You know,
right?
Rebecca, if we can go back a slide.
Sure.
It strikes me that Elder Bednar is looking more and more reptilian.
Well, you know, I went through quite a number of pictures to pick one that I considered flattering, because I try to be a nice person.
Was this the best you could do?
Was the best I could do.
And that green tie, he has a thing for that green tie, and it's not helping.
Have you seen the new Alien movie? Have you seen the Alien baby? Okay, then I won't say
No, I'm not watching any more Alien movies.
I was just saying anyway, there was a comparison made by
someone.
We get to see one every 6 months.
And then the third one was just like, bleh. First two were great, and I have no desire to see any more Alien movies after that. Sorry about that.
Well, there you go. You've said it. So anyway, basically 10 years ago, Elder Bednar said, fill the earth with goodness by using social media to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so he's saying, I think this is funny, what we have accomplished thus far in this dispensation, communicating the gospel message through social media, it's a good beginning, but it's only a small trickle. So he's saying what you've done already is okay, but we need to open the floodgates. And I know we reported on this a couple of weeks ago. The governor task force on, safety for children is saying, do not encourage children to go on social media, especially to put forth their religious views, right? You're just opening yourself up for a lot of attacks. It may not be the most healthy place for kids. But here in this interview just last week, Elder Bednar saying, nope, you got to get on there. He says, I now extend you the invitation to help transform the trickle into a flood. Beginning this place on this day, I exhort you to sweep the earth with messages filled with righteousness and truth, messages that are authentic, edifying, and praiseworthy, and literally to sweep the earth as with a flood. And so here I have a picture. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Facebook Marketplace, but missionaries go on there all the time, especially sister missionaries, with plates of cookies. I went through a whole bunch of these pictures. I didn't even want to post any because I don't want to further this. So I made AI sister missionaries, which is why they're wearing jeans.
And why it says LLDS on the apron?
It's LLDS. Yes, that's the latter days. That's right. But anyway, they go on there and they're like, hey,
we're right there at the end now.
Yeah, we'll come to your house with cookies and a message. It's just so dangerous. I think any parent would see it that way. But Elder Bednar seems to be saying, please share your lives, share your authentic Mormon lives, I think, as long as they fit in with the narrative that we're trying to portray. So one of the ideas that he gave as we close out here is, I thought this was really interesting. So he said, just be normal and natural. It's funny how many times they have to tell the members to be normal and natural. There was something about 15 years ago where they were trying to tell people how to interact with others. And they said, invite them to a barbecue, smile, be friendly. I mean, things that you don't normally have to tell people to do, like just be a normal person, right? Don't be weird. Anyway, be normal.
Don't let them know natural. What your real ulterior motive is.
Exactly. It's hard to be normal and natural when you have an ulterior motive. That's what
you're trying to get these people baptized.
Yep, you've hit it on the head. So Elder Bednar encourages individuals and families to consider their normal routine and think about what they would be interested in posting. It doesn't have to be a gospel message, he said. We are the gospel message. I love that. Boom. We are the gospel message.
I am scripture.
What we do is much more important than what we may write or say. So perhaps somebody could highlight one aspect of their family home evening, such as a young child giving a lesson. Yeah, make sure that you post a picture of that young child and give their full name, birth date, and tell everybody where his elementary school is too. That'll be perfect. Anyway, he says, now we all think that's normal, a young child giving a lesson for family night, says Elder Bednar. But to those that are not familiar with home evening, this is abnormal in a home to have a child taking the lead in providing some instruction. So I think his idea that people would be so impressed with that. What kind of religion has taught a young child to be able to talk so eloquently about the scriptures? I think he's thinking that would have an impact on people. So he says Latter-day Saints live a distinctive lifestyle that some people may find interesting. Elder Bednar said, just live the gospel. Let some of that be in your social media posts, and it will create curiosity. So to me, again, can you have it both ways? Mormon Lives of Secret Wives is definitely creating curiosity, but it's not the kind of curiosity that Elder Bednar wants to create by showing your child on social media leading a family home evening lesson. So I don't know. Can they ask to have it both ways? I'm not sure. What do you think, RFM, as we close out here?
I think the church has always wanted it both ways.
Yeah.
And they always want it their way. And the other way, they try and shame people into not doing. By the way, if I were the president of the church right now, I think I would change the moniker from LDS to LLDS. And I would say LDS is a victory for Satan. It's now LLDS because we are in the latter days. We're the latter day saints.
The latter, double LDS. That sounds kind of powerful, right? Double LDS.
Yes.
I like
11:59 and a half p.m. LLDS. And also, it seems to me that if you went back up to what Elder Bednar was saying about, was it Elder Bednar? No, it was the statement about the church made, obviously about heretic.
Oh, at the very
it's
beginning. Yeah.
chastising them for trying to indicate
Yeah.
that missionaries are unsafe. Well,
Yeah.
missionaries go out and they talk to people. That's their job, is to talk to non-members. And it's funny that Elder Bednar, or the church statement, is saying that when in the temple dedication, the temple groundbreaking video that we just looked at, the individual quoted President Nelson before he quoted Elder Bednar. And what he said, that President Nelson said, was, we need these temples because the world is becoming increasingly what? Evil.
Evil, wicked. Oh, very good point. And yet we're sending our boys and girls out there.
Yes. And then the church is chastising the makers of heretic for suggesting that they might not be safe, even though the president of the church is harping on how the world is becoming more and more evil. And those seem to me to be conflicting messages.
Yeah.
While at the same time, every built temple brings more light into the world.
Well, that's actually
the
true.
messages do seem to contradict themselves.
It does bring more light.
Yeah,
to the
if we
point
talk
where
about light,
can't see the stars
if we talk about light
anymore.
pollution, right?
Any thoughts, Bill? Final thoughts on this? This is the end of our story.
The message from Bednar was that, it doesn't always have to be a thing that you're doing because we are the gospel message. But again, irony, when people are asked, what do they think about the Mormon church? They, on one hand, yes, the members seem to be happy and family oriented, right? We hear that a lot. They seem to be good people. But when you ask people what they know about the church itself, it's financial fraud, sexual abuse, and hidden history. And so when Elder Bednar says we are the gospel message, it's almost like he's asking the members to bail out the leaders, because it's the members who put forth a good image of the church, and it's the top 15 that put out something that is less than good.
And by the way, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right here. These, I believe, are 6 members of the church.
Mm-hmm. As far as I understand, they're all members of the church. So.
I'm a member of the church. People should look at
I'm a member of the church, I think.
People should never look to you for an example of anything, Rebecca.
Oh,
except
thank you.
High education and extreme organizational and research skills.
There you go. That's it. Well, and again, I just, I'm a person who I think I read those statements about how Mormons are supposed to be. And that wasn't my life in Mormonism. My kids didn't turn out perfect like that. They went other directions. Things happened that weren't perfect. I don't have that life that Elder Bednar is saying I should post on social media. So I'm not going to post that. When I was in the church, I tried very hard to post things that did follow the party line. And I think then you get in that trap where you're reading everybody else trying to post things that look perfect. And then that just leads to a very unhealthy, like not feeling great about yourself. So I think it's kind of almost a recipe for disaster in that way.
Right. If nothing else, at least these people apparently are being authentic.
That's what I'm saying. It's all out there. There it is. So September 6th, everybody, Streisand effect. You can't look away. We're definitely going to have to cover it on the newscast.
And it
when
could give
actually
President
comes out.
Nelson a heart attack 3 days before his 100th birthday.
I feel like it might. September 6th.
It's a big one, Elizabeth.
Yep.
Okay, and you had one more thing up
I
here.
do have one more slide. That's
oh.
right. Because we are daring to take a break on Labor Day, because I feel like the rest of you will take a break on Labor Day too. So it's Happy Labor Day from the Mormon Newscast. We will see everybody back again like clockwork on Monday, September the 9th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So everybody have a great Labor Day.
Perfect. Before we close out, what do you guys have going on? What do you want to tell the world that you've either been working on or about ready to work on?
Rebecca?
Well, I think I already kind of plugged my own show in the middle of it, but we do have an episode on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. That's when we always put our Tuesday episodes out. And it's with a missionary who this experience is pretty extreme. And he didn't really recognize that it was causing this PTSD, because how would you know that, and kind of lifelong symptoms until he finally got some help. So it's a cautionary tale. He's an awesome guy, and I'm really excited for you guys to be able to hear his story. And yeah, it's pretty unbelievable.
As for me and my house, we just got out, I think I mentioned, the next to last, Brush Up Your Shakespeare on Hamlet. There's one more scene to go. I think it's really pretty good. The play's great. I think my podcasts are okay. But yeah, so we just got out Act 5, Scene 1. There's only Act 5, Scene 2 to go. And that's where, everything happens, right? Everything's been building up to this point. So we're at a very exciting place. And if you want to get caught up, now's the time to do it at Brush Up Your Shakespeare. Wednesday evening, we've got a Mormonism Live. I've got no idea what we're doing on Wednesday, and maybe I shouldn't bring it up here yet, Bill. I'll talk to you about it behind the scenes. What?
Me either. So we'll have to talk about it behind the scenes. And somewhere here in the last few weeks, we had a Wednesday we had to adjust on. And so rather than that be your Wednesday, you took the next one. But that's going to run into an issue next week, because we're supposed to interview Julie Hanks on September 4th. And so you and I do need to get together and figure out the next couple of Wednesdays. And I've got
reschedule her coming on.
Yes, that's what I mean. We'll have to sit down and reschedule.
Right, Julie.
Yeah, Julie's. I'm sorry, Julie.
Now you guys see how it works there at Mormonism Live. It's a well-oiled machine.
And then, in terms of, I sent you a message earlier. I didn't check my phone before I got in here for the show, but I had thrown out the idea that maybe the possibility of doing a Mormonism After Dark this Friday.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sweet.
Absolutely.
Those are going very well. I've heard really positive
really
feedback on those. Really well.
Yeah, I think the last one was better than the third one. The third one was better than the second one, and the second one was better than the first one. And it feels like we've really hit a really cool stride. So I'm excited.
They're getting better, because I think people now understand I think people are like nervous at
I think
first.
we understand.
Like going to a party, right? You walk in the door, you're like, what's happening? I'll get a drink. I'll stand here. Do I talk? What do I do? And now your audience is loosening up and able to call about some really provocative topics. And I think you guys have hit your stride. I think it's an awesome show.
It's a party show.
Right.
It's a party show. I think you wear a tuxedo. My God.
It's true. I do. If you want to see our feminine tuxedo, tune in. If you want to see Bill Reel in a fuchsia jacket looking like a really good looking Don Johnson, then tune in as well. But I think episode 3 will go down in history as the one where we played the clip with Cardin Ellis in it in the movie The Jackal.
That's right.
It's a little known part that he played in that movie. Amazing.
So check out episode 3 and then watch episode 4 and then join us this Friday for our 5th installment of Mormonism After Dark.
Do you think Cardin has seen that yet?
No.
I hope so. I keep talking about it.
Yeah, I would assume his people have. Their people pull clips for them to talk. Yeah, they pull clips for them to talk about, but they don't watch the clips. So
that's true.
They end up talking about things without having watched what the context of the thing is that they're showing and speaking on is.
I'd love it if they pulled that clip and played it.
It'd be great, huh?
I think it would be great. I know you're in charge, so I'm not going to sign off, Bill. I'll just say it's been a great show tonight. I look forward to seeing you. Whatever the heck we're doing on Wednesday, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
On Mormonism Live, and then Friday at Mormonism After Dark, and of course Tuesday with Mormonish and Rebecca and Landon.
Boy, with so many victories for Satan just in that one sentence. Oh my God.
It is a busy week.
It has been a good decision on most of our parts to use Mormon in the name of what we're doing, including here, folks, at the Mormon Newscast. Thank you for joining us tonight. As RFM pointed to, if none of those other things, we'll see you next Monday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time for the next installment. Oh, next that's right. Monday. 2 Mondays from now because of Labor Day. Yep. Sorry about that.
So
have a great night, everybody.
Watch the Mormon Lives, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives on the 6th, and then we'll all talk about it on the 9th.
That'll be fun. Have a great night, everybody.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Gordon B. Hinckley here. That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.